William Clark, one of the most notable figures in early American history, was born on August 1st, 1770, in Caroline County, Virginia. His early years were deeply influenced by the social and political environment of colonial America, a period marked by burgeoning tension between the American colonies and Great Britain. Clark's upbringing in a prosperous Virginian family provided him with a solid foundation of education and military discipline, which would later prove essential in his pioneering explorations and leadership roles. Clark was the ninth of 10 children born to John and Rogers Clark, a family of significant social standing and military tradition. His father, John Clark, was a militia officer during the American Revolutionary War, a factor that introduced young William to the values of service, leadership, and patriotism from an early age. The Clark household fostered a sense of duty and adventure that would shape William's character and ambitions throughout his life. Education played a crucial role in Clark's formative years. Unlike many of his contemporaries who received minimal formal schooling, Clark benefited from tutoring at home and, later, attendance at a local school. This educational foundation helped him develop skills in mathematics, navigation, and map-making, disciplines that were uncommon yet indispensable for the frontier life and exploratory missions he would later undertake. In addition to his academic training, Clark was also physically active and engaged in outdoor pursuits typical of frontier youth. Hunting, horseback riding, and survival skills were integral parts of his childhood experience, which acclimated him to the challenges of wilderness living. These practical skills, combined with his intellectual pursuits, forged a balanced individual capable of both strategic thinking and hands-on action. Clark's family moved to Kentucky when he was still a teenager, exposing him to the western frontier's dynamic and often volatile environment. Kentucky, at that time, was a frontier region characterized by frequent conflicts with Native American tribes and harsh natural conditions. This relocation further shaped Clark's understanding of the American frontier's complexities, including issues of settlement, security, and diplomacy. The death of Clark's father in 1779 had a profound impact on a young William. As the family patriarch passed away when William was only 9 years old, the responsibility for the family's welfare increasingly fell on his older siblings. Nevertheless, William remained resilient and continued to pursue his interests in military service and exploration, motivated in part by the examples set by his elder brothers. One of Clark's older brothers, George Rogers Clark, emerged as a prominent military leader during the Revolutionary War, particularly in the Illinois Campaign. George's successes and reputation as a frontier hero undoubtedly influenced William's aspirations and provided a role model of leadership and courage in the face of adversity. This fraternal connection to military achievement helped solidify William's resolve to serve his country. Clark's early career trajectory was also shaped by his apprenticeship under Captain Joseph Bowman, a militia officer. Under Bowman's tutelage, Clark gained valuable experience in frontier warfare, military organization, and leadership. This mentorship served as a practical extension of his education and provided a bridge between his childhood ambitions and his eventual entry into formal military service. Throughout his youth, Clark demonstrated an aptitude for navigation and cartography. His interest in map-making was sparked by the need for accurate geographic knowledge in the expanding American territories. This skill would become one of his defining attributes, as he later contributed extensively to the mapping of the vast Western territories during his expeditions. William Clark's formal military career began in the early 1790s, during a time when the young United States was consolidating its borders and establishing control over its western territories. The post-revolutionary period was characterized by continuous skirmishes and tensions with Native American tribes, as well as the looming presence of British and Spanish forces competing for influence in North America. Clark's entry into military service positioned him at the crossroads of these complex geopolitical dynamics. In 1789, at the age of 19, Clark accepted a commission as a lieutenant in the Virginia militia. His early assignments involved patrolling and securing frontier settlements in Kentucky and the Northwest Territory, a region that was still largely unsettled and fraught with danger. These duties required not only military skill, but also diplomatic tact, as relations with indigenous groups were delicate and often volatile. During this period, Clark developed a reputation for calm leadership and strategic thinking under pressure. His ability to navigate hostile terrain and command men in unpredictable situations distinguished him among his peers. Clark's experience in the militia deepened his understanding of frontier warfare, which often involved small, mobile units engaging in guerrilla-style combat rather than conventional battles. Clark's service in the militia also intersected with his growing interest in exploration and geographic knowledge. He frequently engaged in reconnaissance missions, which required mapping unknown regions and gathering intelligence on native populations and European settlements. This work contributed to his reputation as a skilled cartographer and scout, abilities that would later prove vital to his career. One notable early military engagement was Clark's involvement in the Northwest Indian War, 1785 to 1795, a conflict between the United States and a confederation of Native American tribes allied with the British. Clark participated in several expeditions aimed at securing American control over the Ohio Valley, which was a critical area for expansion. The war highlighted the challenges of balancing military force with diplomatic efforts to establish peace and order. Clark's leadership qualities led to a promotion to captain in 1792, a rank that gave him greater responsibility over men and missions. Around this time, Clark began collaborating closely with other officers who shared his vision for Western expansion and exploration. His growing network within military and political circles positioned him well for future appointments and opportunities. The experience gained during his early military career was complemented by Clark's keen observational skills. He meticulously documented terrain, waterways, and settlements, contributing to military and governmental knowledge of the Western frontier. His maps and reports provided valuable information that helped guide further expeditions and settlement efforts. In addition to his military duties, Clark developed a practical understanding of logistics and supply management. Maintaining provisions and coordinating the movement of men across vast and difficult landscapes required careful planning and adaptability. These logistical skills would become crucial during the large-scale expedition he would later co-lead with Meriwether Lewis. Clark's early military service was not without personal challenges. The frontier was a harsh environment, and the threat of attacks, disease, and isolation tested his endurance and resolve. Despite these hardships, Clark's commitment to his duties remained unwavering, reflecting a profound sense of purpose and dedication to the nascent United States. The meeting of William Clark and Meriwether Lewis stands as a pivotal moment in the narrative of American exploration. Their partnership, forged in a period of burgeoning national ambition, ultimately culminated in the famous Corps of Discovery Expedition. Though their paths converged naturally through military and political circles, the story of their acquaintance is rooted in shared goals and complementary talents rather than mere coincidence. Meriwether Lewis, a young officer serving as President Thomas Jefferson's private secretary, was charged with leading an expedition to explore the newly acquired Louisiana Territory following the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Jefferson, inspired by Enlightenment ideals and eager to assert American sovereignty over Western lands, sought a capable and resourceful leader who could navigate uncharted territories, establish relations with Native American tribes, and gather scientific data. Lewis was chosen for his keen intellect and military background, but he recognized the necessity of a trusted partner to ensure the mission's success. Clark, by contrast, had already amassed considerable experience in frontier military operations and had a reputation as an expert in navigation and cartography. His skills in these areas made him an ideal candidate to co-lead the expedition. The introduction between Lewis and Clark was facilitated by mutual acquaintances within the military and government, particularly by Clark's older brother, George Rogers Clark, who was well known in national defense circles. Their initial meeting took place in 1803 in the region of Louisville, Kentucky, a hub for westward migration and a logical gathering point for planning an expedition into the vast unknown. From the outset, Lewis and Clark found common ground in their vision of exploring the western frontier, a mission that went beyond mere geographic discovery to encompass scientific inquiry, diplomacy, and expansion of American influence. The partnership was characterized by mutual respect and a clear division of labor. Lewis, with his background in science and close ties to Jefferson, took primary responsibility for the expedition's overall leadership and scientific objectives. Clark's expertise in terrain navigation, map-making, and military command complemented Lewis's strengths. This balance of abilities formed the cornerstone of what would become a highly effective collaboration. Planning the expedition required extensive preparation, and Lewis and Clark devoted months to organizing personnel, securing supplies, and studying existing knowledge about the territory. They gathered detailed information from traders, Native Americans, and earlier explorers, recognizing that success depended on both thorough preparation and adaptability to unforeseen circumstances. Recruiting men for the expedition was another critical task. Lewis and Clark sought individuals skilled in hunting, wilderness survival, and military discipline. Many of the recruits were frontiersmen accustomed to the hardships of life beyond the settled states. This selection process reflected the understanding that the journey would demand physical endurance, courage, and versatility. In addition to assembling the team, Lewis and Clark worked closely with government officials to secure funding and support. President Jefferson's endorsement was crucial, as the expedition required resources beyond what a typical military mission might demand. The government's investment underscored the expedition's significance not only as a venture of exploration, but as a strategic assertion of American territorial claims. The conception of the expedition was also deeply influenced by the political context of the early 19th century. The Louisiana Purchase had doubled the size of the United States overnight, but little was known about the geography, natural resources, or inhabitants of these lands. The prospect of potential conflict with European powers and native tribes heightened the urgency of sending a well-prepared expedition to establish American presence and gather intelligence. The preparation for the Lewis and Clark expedition was an extraordinary logistical and strategic undertaking, requiring careful attention to detail, resource management, and coordination among various parties. Once William Clark was officially named co-leader, the duo faced the daunting task of assembling men, equipment, and supplies for a journey that would traverse thousands of miles into largely unknown territory. The expedition was formally sanctioned by President Thomas Jefferson in 1803, soon after the Louisiana Purchase was finalized. Jefferson's vision was not only to map the vast new territory, but also to establish American claims by forging peaceful relations with Native American tribes, identify potential trade routes, and collect scientific data on flora, fauna, and geography. This multifaceted mission required an expedition team that was both disciplined and adaptable. Choosing a launch point was a key decision. St. Louis, Missouri, known as the Gateway to the West, was selected due to its strategic location along the Mississippi River and its established infrastructure supporting trade and travel into the frontier. The city was already a bustling hub where American settlers, fur traders, and Native Americans intersected, making it an ideal staging area for the expedition. Securing funding and supplies was another critical component. The government allocated approximately $2,500 for the venture, a substantial sum for the time, but still limited given the scale of the expedition. Lewis and Clark had to be meticulous in procuring provisions such as firearms, ammunition, clothing, tents, navigational tools, food staples, and scientific instruments including compasses, sextants, and botanical supplies. Recruitment of the Corps of Discovery was a rigorous process led primarily by Clark. The men selected were a diverse group, ranging from skilled frontiersmen to soldiers, many with experience in wilderness survival and hunting. Clark's criteria emphasized loyalty, endurance, and the ability to handle isolation and hardship. The final group included both seasoned veterans and younger men eager for adventure. Training and drilling of the Corps were essential for maintaining discipline and preparedness. Clark, with his military background, implemented regular exercises and emphasized order to ensure the men could function cohesively in challenging circumstances. This training also included instruction on how to interact diplomatically with Native American tribes, as peaceful encounters were critical for the expedition's success. In addition to human resources, the physical equipment required careful management. The team procured keelboats and pirogues for river navigation, which were specially designed for carrying heavy loads and maneuvering through shallow and unpredictable waters. The expedition's success depended heavily on these vessels for transport of men and supplies during the initial stages. As the day of departure approached in the spring of 1804, Lewis and Clark coordinated with local traders and Native American leaders to gather intelligence on conditions ahead. They also worked to establish a supply chain that would allow them to replenish provisions during the journey. This planning underscored the expedition's complexity and the importance of collaboration with existing frontier communities. The final preparations involved organizing the crew, packing supplies, and setting clear objectives. On May 14, 1804, the Corps of Discovery officially set out from Camp Du Bois near St. Louis. This marked the beginning of a historic journey that would push the boundaries of American knowledge and influence. Clark's leadership was instrumental in maintaining morale and order as the expedition embarked on its uncertain path. As the Corps of Discovery pushed westward along the Missouri River, they entered a vast expanse of rolling plains and rugged landscapes that would test their endurance and resolve. The Missouri River, with its winding channels and unpredictable currents, served as both guide and challenge during this critical phase of the expedition. Navigating its course required constant vigilance and skillful management of their keelboat and pirogues. The journey through the Great Plains presented an ever-changing environment marked by expansive grasslands, intermittent woodlands, and an abundance of wildlife. This region was home to various Native American tribes, including the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, whose cultures and ways of life were largely unfamiliar to most Americans. Encounters with these groups provided vital opportunities for diplomacy and cultural exchange. One of the expedition's early significant milestones was the arrival of the Mandan villages, located near present-day North Dakota. The Mandan people offered the Corps not only food and shelter, but also critical knowledge about the land to the west. Their intricate agricultural practices and established trade networks impressed Lewis and Clark, highlighting the diversity and sophistication of Native American societies. During their stay with the Mandan, the expedition members took advantage of the opportunity to rest, resupply, and conduct scientific observations. Clark, in particular, used this time to refine maps and document geographic features. The peaceful relations established with the Mandan set a precedent for future interactions and underscored the importance of diplomacy in the success of the expedition. Traveling through the Great Plains also exposed the Corps to formidable natural challenges. The vast openness of the terrain offered little shelter from severe weather, including thunderstorms, extreme heat, and sudden cold snaps. These conditions tested the physical limits of the men and demanded constant adaptation in their clothing, camp setups, and travel schedules. The plains teemed with wildlife, offering both sustenance and danger. Buffalo herds provided a vital source of meat and materials, but also required skilled hunting and processing. Encounters with predators, such as wolves and bears, were frequent, necessitating vigilance and the maintenance of armed defense at campsites. The men's survival depended on balancing respect for the natural world with practical resourcefulness. Interactions with Native American tribes along the Missouri River revealed a complex tapestry of alliances, trade relations, and territorial boundaries. The Corps often navigated delicate social dynamics, striving to communicate peacefully despite language barriers and differing cultural customs. Clark's diplomacy and knowledge of Native American protocols became essential tools in securing safe passage. The expedition's progress was punctuated by moments of awe and discovery. The vastness of the plains, the majesty of wildlife migrations, and the unique plant species all contributed to the scientific value of the journey. Lewis and Clark meticulously recorded botanical and zoological specimens, contributing to the expanding knowledge of North American natural history. As the Corps approached the confluence of the Missouri and Yellowstone rivers, the terrain began to change, signaling the approach of the Rocky Mountains. This transition marked a shift in both physical geography and the nature of the challenges ahead. The men prepared to leave the relative openness of the plains for the rugged wilderness beyond. The crossing of the Rocky Mountains represented one of the most formidable challenges faced by the Lewis and Clark expedition. After months of navigating the relatively gentle plains and river valleys, the Corps now confronted steep, rugged terrain, unpredictable weather, and the looming uncertainty of what lay ahead. This segment of the journey tested the endurance, leadership, and resourcefulness of Clark and the entire expedition. As the expedition approached the mountains, the terrain became increasingly difficult to traverse. Narrow passes, dense forests, and rocky slopes required the men to lighten their loads and often travel on foot rather than by boat. The physical exertion was immense, with steep ascents that left many exhausted. The elevation changes also brought cooler temperatures and frequent rain, complicating efforts to maintain dry gear and provisions. The Corps faced several logistical challenges during this phase, including the need to carry boats and supplies over mountainous obstacles. This portaging demanded extraordinary teamwork and physical strength. Clark's military experience was crucial in organizing these efforts, as he coordinated the men into efficient units to manage the heavy burdens. Morale was strained, but Clark's steady leadership helped sustain determination. Navigating through the Rocky Mountains also involved encounters with diverse Native American groups, including the Shoshone and Nez Perce tribes. These interactions were vital for securing assistance, guidance, and safe passage. In particular, the Shoshone, led by Chief Kamiwait, provided horses that enabled the expedition to cross the mountains more effectively. This collaboration was a turning point in the journey and underscored the importance of diplomacy. The knowledge shared by Native Americans was critical in identifying viable routes through the treacherous terrain. Without their guidance, the expedition might have faced insurmountable obstacles. Clark and Lewis both documented these interactions carefully, recognizing that the success of the mission depended heavily on forming alliances and understanding indigenous expertise. As the Corps emerged from the mountains, they entered the lush and diverse landscapes of the Pacific Northwest. The change in environment was dramatic, with towering coniferous forests, abundant rivers, and a cooler, wetter climate. This new setting introduced different challenges and opportunities for exploration, scientific observation, and interaction with coastal tribes. The Pacific Northwest was inhabited by numerous Native American groups, including the Chinook, Clatsop, and Tillamook peoples. The Corps engaged in trade, gift exchanges, and diplomacy to establish peaceful relations. Clark's skills in negotiation and cultural sensitivity were crucial in building trust and securing cooperation from these communities, which was essential for the expedition's survival and success. During this period, Clark and his team conducted extensive scientific investigations, collecting botanical and zoological specimens previously unknown to European Americans. The diverse ecosystems of the region offered a wealth of new information, from marine life to forest plants, contributing significantly to the body of knowledge about the continent's natural history. Exploring the waterways of the Pacific Northwest, including the Columbia River, presented unique navigational challenges. The Corps encountered powerful currents, rapids, and unfamiliar river landscapes. Clark's aptitude for map-making and careful observation ensured that accurate records were kept, which later aided subsequent explorers and settlers. Throughout the journey, one of the most delicate and essential tasks undertaken by William Clark and the Corps of Discovery was establishing and maintaining diplomatic relations with the diverse Native American tribes they encountered. These interactions were not only critical for the expedition's survival, but also for fostering peaceful coexistence and gathering valuable information about the lands and peoples of the West. The Corps recognized early on that respectful engagement was necessary to secure assistance, food, guides, and safe passage. Clark's leadership often involved acting as a diplomat and cultural intermediary, using gestures, gifts, and interpreters to communicate goodwill. This was a complex task, requiring sensitivity to the distinct customs, languages, and social structures of each tribe. One of the earliest significant encounters was with the Mandan and Hidatsa peoples, whose villages became vital winter quarters for the expedition. Clark observed their agricultural practices, social organization, and trade networks, recording detailed descriptions that challenged contemporary stereotypes about Native Americans. These visits allowed the Corps to replenish supplies and gather intelligence on further routes. In the Rockies and beyond, relations with the Shoshone tribe were pivotal. Clark's negotiation skills and diplomacy helped secure horses and guides, which were indispensable for crossing the mountains. The exchange of gifts and mutual respect fostered a sense of cooperation, highlighting Clark's role not just as an explorer, but as a cultural bridge between Native societies and the expanding United States. The expedition also encountered coastal tribes, such as the Chinook and Clatsop, near the Pacific Ocean. These groups were skilled traders and seafarers with rich cultural traditions. Clark documented their ceremonies, languages, and social customs, providing some of the first ethnographic accounts by Americans of these peoples. His descriptions reflected a nuanced appreciation of their complexity and adaptability. Clark and his men often used symbolic gestures such as peace medals bearing the likeness of President Jefferson, trade goods including cloth, beads, and metal tools, and promises of future friendship to establish trust. These tokens were carefully chosen to resonate with indigenous values and to represent the authority of the United States. The exchange of gifts created a diplomatic framework that extended beyond the expedition itself. Language barriers presented ongoing challenges. Clark and Lewis relied heavily on interpreters, including native individuals who had learned English or had connections with multiple tribes. The ability to communicate effectively was essential for negotiating safe passage and understanding local customs, laws, and taboos. Clark's notes reveal a continuous effort to learn and respect these linguistic differences. The cultural exchanges were not one-sided. The Corps observed and participated in native ceremonies, feasts, and rituals, gaining insight into spiritual beliefs and social hierarchies. Clark recorded these experiences with a mixture of curiosity and respect, contributing to an early ethnographic record that emphasized the diversity of indigenous cultures. These relationships also had strategic importance. By establishing peaceful ties with tribes along the route, the expedition helped lay the groundwork for future American expansion. Clark understood that diplomacy could prevent conflicts that might otherwise endanger settlers and explorers. The trust earned through respectful engagement was crucial for American claims to the region. A significant and enduring legacy of the Lewis and Clark expedition was its unprecedented contribution to the scientific understanding of the vast and largely unexplored American West. While William Clark is often remembered for his leadership and cartographic skills, his role in gathering and documenting natural history was equally important. The expedition served as a mobile laboratory, meticulously recording flora, fauna, and geological features along the route. From the earliest stages of the journey, Clark and his team took careful note of the plants and animals they encountered. Unlike earlier European explorers, who often focused solely on territorial claims or trade, Lewis and Clark were tasked with a broad scientific mandate. This included collecting specimens and detailed descriptions that could enrich knowledge across multiple disciplines such as botany, zoology, and geology. Clark's naturalistic observations complemented those of Meriwether Lewis, and together they created comprehensive journals describing the biodiversity of the regions traversed. Many of the species they documented were previously unknown to science, marking the expedition as one of the first major American scientific field studies. The records included not only descriptions, but also information on the uses of plants by native peoples, thus integrating ethnobotanical knowledge. Among the notable discoveries were plants such as the bitterroot, camas, and various species of sagebrush and wildflowers. These botanical samples were carefully preserved and later studied by scientists back east, greatly expanding the botanical understanding of North America's western ecosystems. Clark's meticulous notes helped to identify the ecological significance of these species within their environments. The expedition also cataloged an impressive variety of animals. Clark himself recorded sightings and behaviors of mammals, such as the grizzly bear, pronghorn antelope, and beaver. The grizzly bear, in particular, became a symbol of the untamed wilderness, and its detailed descriptions helped the wider public appreciate the richness of Western wildlife. Bird species were extensively documented as well, including the passenger pigeon, western meadowlark, and several types of waterfowl. These ornithological observations provided early insight into migratory patterns and habitat preferences. Clark's journals often reflected a keen eye for detail, noting not just appearance, but also behavior and ecological roles. In addition to biological discoveries, Clark contributed to the understanding of geological formations and hydrology. The expedition crossed diverse landscapes, from river valleys to mountain ranges, observing rock types, soil conditions, and water sources. These geological notes were important for future explorers, settlers, and scientists interested in the physical characteristics of the territory. Clark's scientific efforts were intertwined with practical needs. Understanding the environment helped the Corps secure food, identify medicinal plants, and avoid natural hazards. This pragmatic use of scientific knowledge underscored the expedition's dual mission of exploration and survival, blending curiosity with necessity. The collected specimens and records were carefully transported back east, where they became invaluable resources for American universities, naturalists, and government agencies. Clark's contributions helped lay the foundation for the emerging field of American natural history, fostering a spirit of inquiry that would influence generations of scientists and explorers. The success of the Lewis and Clark expedition owed much to the effective leadership and complex interpersonal dynamics within the Corps of discovery. William Clark's role extended far beyond that of a navigator and cartographer. He was a central figure in maintaining discipline, resolving conflicts, and fostering camaraderie among the men. His leadership style blended military rigor with empathy, a balance that proved crucial in sustaining the group through hardships. Clark's experience as a military officer shaped his approach to organization and command. He understood the importance of clearly defined roles and responsibilities, ensuring that each member knew their duties and was held accountable. This structure was essential during moments of crisis, such as navigating treacherous rapids or enduring harsh weather, where coordinated action determined survival. Despite the military discipline, Clark also recognized the human dimension of the expedition. He paid close attention to morale, often mediating disputes and providing encouragement. His ability to connect with men from diverse backgrounds, ranging from seasoned frontiersmen to less experienced recruits, helped maintain unity and purpose. This empathy fostered loyalty and trust within the ranks. The Corps faced numerous challenges that tested leadership and group cohesion. Illness was a constant threat, with scurvy, dysentery, and injuries afflicting many members. Clark often took responsibility for medical care, overseeing treatments and ensuring the sick received attention. His vigilance contributed to relatively low mortality rates given the expedition's harsh conditions. Environmental hardships also strained the group. Prolonged exposure to extreme weather, scarcity of food, and difficult terrain led to fatigue and frustration. Clark's leadership involved careful planning of rest periods and rationing supplies to mitigate these stresses. He encouraged resilience by emphasizing the expedition's significance and the shared goal of discovery. Internal conflicts occasionally arose, reflecting the pressures of isolation and danger. Disputes over resources, personal grievances, and differing opinions on strategy required diplomatic resolution. Clark's role as mediator was crucial, as unresolved tensions could have undermined the mission. His steady presence and fairness helped maintain harmony. Clark's leadership was also instrumental during interactions with Native American tribes. He carefully instructed the men on appropriate behavior and protocols to avoid misunderstandings that could escalate into violence. His guidance ensured the Corps presented a united and respectful front, strengthening diplomatic efforts. The relationship between Clark and Meriwether Lewis was another key dynamic. Their mutual respect and complementary skills provided a stable command structure. Clark often handled logistical and tactical decisions, while Lewis focused on scientific documentation and overall direction. This balance allowed the expedition to adapt effectively to varied challenges. Clark's talents extended to detailed record-keeping, including maps, journals, and reports. These documents were essential for navigating uncharted territory and for communicating the expedition's findings to government officials and the public. His precise cartography set new standards for accuracy and detail in frontier mapping. After the triumphant return of the Corps of Discovery in 1806, William Clark's life entered a new phase, marked by public service, personal reflection, and the shaping of his enduring legacy. The expedition had elevated him to national prominence, but Clark's post-expedition years revealed a man deeply committed to applying his experience toward the governance and development of America's Western territories. One of Clark's most significant post-expedition roles was his appointment as Superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Louisiana Territory, a position he held for over 2 decades. In this capacity, Clark worked to implement U.S. policies toward Native American tribes, a complex and often contentious responsibility. He relied on his deep understanding of indigenous cultures, garnered during the expedition, to navigate diplomacy and negotiate treaties. Clark's approach to Native American relations reflected both his respect for tribal sovereignty and the pressures of American expansionism. While he sought to maintain peace and mutual cooperation, the growing tide of settlers and government interests often put him at odds with tribes whose lands were being encroached upon. His efforts illustrate the difficult balance between his roles as a mediator and an agent of the U.S. government. Beyond diplomacy, Clark took on military and administrative duties in the frontier regions. He served as governor of the Missouri Territory and was involved in organizing militias to protect settlers from raids and maintain order. His leadership helped stabilize these nascent communities, providing a framework for eventual statehood and integration into the United States. Clark also dedicated himself to further exploration and surveying. His extensive knowledge of Western geography proved invaluable in guiding new settlers and informing federal decisions about land distribution and infrastructure development. Maps and reports he produced contributed to the expansion of roads, forts, and trading posts, facilitating westward migration. Despite his public roles, Clark's later years were marked by personal challenges. He faced financial difficulties due to unpaid government compensation for his expedition and territorial service. Efforts to secure adequate remuneration were often frustrated by bureaucratic delays, leaving him in a precarious economic position despite his national service. Clark's family life was a source of stability and solace. He married Julia Hancock, and their home became a gathering place for frontier society and government officials. Clark's reputation as a man of integrity and dedication extended into his personal relationships, where he was known for his loyalty and humility despite his accomplishments. The legacy of William Clark extends far beyond his lifetime. His contributions to the mapping and opening of the American West laid the groundwork for the nation's manifest destiny ethos, influencing policies and attitudes toward expansion for generations. His detailed records remain invaluable historical sources, illuminating the geography, peoples, and natural environment of early 19th century America. In recognition of his achievements, numerous places bear Clark's name, including counties, towns, rivers, and parks. Monuments and museums commemorate his role in one of the most important exploratory missions in American history, preserving his story for future generations to study and honor. Ultimately, William Clark's legacy is one of bridging worlds between the known and the unknown, between Native Americans and settlers, between wilderness and civilization. His later life reflects the complexities and contradictions of an expanding nation, as well as the enduring impact of a leader who helped shape the course of American history.